What if I told you that you could undo all the trauma and all the things that have been done to you in the past? You are not stuck with them. What if I told you it was possible to virtually erase the experience, the negative experience that has affected you and has traumatized you and plagued your life up until now? There are events that happen to us, things that hurt, things that our system, our nervous system, didn't really know how to react to or what to do, things that went against our principles, things that completely changed our worldview and created a sort of shock and a paralysis to your system, such that it has made it difficult to live and exist in this world. You've been traumatized, you've been hurt, but you can undo it. You can untie the knots. And it's not as hard as you think. A lot of times we think that things are going to be difficult, and we think that things can't be overcome. We even notice and observe within our bodies that the body is reacting in such a way that you can't control it. A lot of this has to do with the programming in the brain. We actually can control it, and we can rewire the system. How would you like to do that? How would you like to rewire yourself altogether such that you don't have to feel burdened anymore, such that you start to feel relaxed and at peace? But it starts with a little bit of an idea that it's possible. It also starts with a little bit of a philosophy. You have to create a new philosophy within yourself to overcome trauma and PTSD. There are a few ways and steps that you can do that. One of the things that I'm going to recommend is ketamine therapy. And I'll tell you and explain to you how it helped me when I was dealing with anxiety and anger issues. I think the anger was coming from the fact that I was feeling this anxiety and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what to do with myself. And there was this idea and philosophy that was backing up that anger, which was a lie, of course. But that philosophy had to do with the idea that God and life was somehow against me. So we are going to get into a few ways that you can start to control your life and rewire your system such that your body doesn't react the same way, because a lot of it has to do with observation. One of the things I want to recommend is ketamine therapy. If you get a doctor's approval first, they need to know that you're medically cleared to take ketamine. But I will say that it is a tangible way to observe a change in your nervous system. It's been documented many times, many patients, including myself, where PTSD and anxiety has lessened quite a bit within the system of someone who goes through the treatment, ketamine treatment. And I have to say, first of all, about that, like, don't take ketamine as a party drug. Don't take it as a recreational thing. That's not, I wouldn't use it for that. I don't think that that would be a good idea. And I think that a lot of this kind of stuff, when you're dealing with psychedelics or psychoactive substances, a lot of it has to do with your intention. That's what matters. That's what causes the change. So going into a session with a pure intention, using a clinic, getting the approvals, things like that, and you going to a place where you're monitored. I would recommend that, where they're monitoring the situation. Um, and then they administer the drug, and you've set the intention. You start to experience the fear, because at least this was my experience. Okay. So I experienced fear and anxiety come up within the session. And it was almost like it was to be expected. But in that session, I noticed something. I noticed that even in the first session, I noticed that there was this sort of ramping up period, and things got weirder and weirder. Now, I kept my eyes open during the session. Some people close their eyes. It's really up to you. But I noticed that as started to ramp up into this experience, I noticed that things started to happen within me. I started to feel anxiety. I started to feel fear. I started to feel all the things, the negative emotions come up, uh, because I've had some experiences before that were induced, I guess, and they were not good experiences. So I had this anxiety, fear, PTSD, whatever. I was actually watching it come up in my system. I wasn't feeling it, however. There was a difference. The I that is separate from what I think that I am, a lot of times we walk through life and we feel like we're identifying with the body. And we feel like we are identifying with this construct of ourselves. And that's what we think is us. Now, that's not the I that I'm talking about. That I was separated from the construct. It was observing the situation, it was observing the feelings and the fear and all the anxiety, but it wasn't feeling it itself. And that is a good distinction, because what's going on there is you're telling the brain that this is not you. This is a feeling, it's an experience, but it has nothing to do with who you are. In fact, the I that is separate from the construct feels completely fine, comfortable, unharmed during the situation. And so this is why I think that it is a good method for doing something physical for yourself, going through this process, this physical therapy, if you will, to help you observe and feel a different feeling and a disassociation from the negativity, the anxiety, the fear, all the things that have been plaguing your system for so long. Now, I mentioned ketamine therapy first because it is a tangible way to observe yourself and see what's going on, and that you can overcome your trauma and your PTSD. The second part is basically addressing perspectives, addressing your opinions. And that is an internal dialogue, because we have these opinions about life. We decide and we use these statements every day that are deciding for us what is our reality. And we have to pay attention to those statements. Like, I never will be able to do such and such, or this always happens to me. These are victimizing statements that keep you down and keep you in the trauma and keep you feeling less than your full potential. So start observing your statements. Start looking at the things that you don't really need. It's kind of like taking out the garbage. There's a lot of garbage that comes from life, that came from maybe your parents, came from maybe friends, people that told you that you're worthless or you can't, or that you'll never be at that level and only certain people get to do that or whatever. You have to root out those things inside of you. And you don't have to do it with anger or resentment to anyone else, because those people are just living their lives and they have no idea what they're talking about, actually. So um, just make sure that it's about you, not about what has happened to you, because then it's easy to fall into the victimization. Like, well, somebody else did this to me. Yes, but they're stupid. Okay, they don't know what they're doing. They're just walking through life saying this or that, and a lot of it is projection. It's really, a lot of it has to do with their internal state and how they feel about themselves, and then they're just putting that on you. So let's get away from the blame game. Move away from all that stuff, but don't even blame yourself. Blaming yourself is actually not taking responsibility. You're still victimizing yourself if you're blaming yourself. So if you're blaming other people or you're blaming yourself, there's a whole victim-y thing going on there that you don't need. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, so there are certain triggers that are happening within you. And that brings me to my next point. All of the things that were done to you, that is not your fault. Okay? That is consciously, in this level of reality, that is not your fault. Your unaware self in this state cannot be blamed. Now, I will talk about some other things later about soul contracts and how that works. We won't get into that today because I think we're giving enough information right here, but there is another perspective about like taking responsibility on a higher level for everything that happens in your life. But we will get to that in another video. But right now, I just want to address the triggers. Okay, so you have certain things that have happened to you, um, certain statements that have been said that are triggers. So physical things that might have happened to you, or verbal things that have been said to you that trigger a certain kind of emotion inside of you. Um, One thing that we don't want to do is ignore the triggers. Okay. Also, we don't want to just live with the triggers and just cope. And we don't want to say that this is just an area of my life that will always be that way, that you can't do this to me, you can't say this thing to me because it causes me anxiety and pain. Because when you do that, you are giving the power to something external. The whole point is to take back your own personal power. Okay, and you can't do that if you are ignoring the festering wound, or if you're blaming someone else for the way you feel about what they're doing or saying. I know that's hard to hear a little bit, but just sit with it, okay? And if that causes you to be upset, that's okay. Just sit with it, okay? Just for a little bit, all right? Yeah, so nothing actually has power over you. It's up to you. Everything in this life is up to you. You can decide anything. You actually, your favorite dog, I know this is going to sound like a terrible thing to say, but listen, your favorite dog could get hit by a bus and you can heal from that. You can get over that. You could get past it. Not that you're dishonoring your dog's life or whatever, but it goes back to a little bit of like control. Like, we all have the ability to get past things. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's just initially easy, and having a grieving period is probably necessary. Just like in the animal kingdom, people that see animals, dogs, whatever, they shake things off. If they get into a fight or something happens that causes them anxiety, they have to kind of get it out of their system. So that's the point. And we'll be covering a little bit more of that later on. But I just want you to know that taking responsibility for your life is not about blaming. It's not about blaming yourself. It's not about any of that. It's an internal situation. The rewiring has to happen inside. So let's start with just a few things to consider going forward. Some kind of physical therapy. That's why I mentioned ketamine therapy. Something that is tangible that you can see a result, especially if you set that internal intention. You can make leaps and bounds to get ahead on therapy by doing something that is physical, okay? The other thing is the rewiring of your system is going to take a little bit of time because it's a practice. Just like a physician has a practice or a lawyer has a practice, whatever, it takes focus. It takes a continual learning and observing of the internal dialogue within yourself. The belief system is a very powerful thing. If you believe something, you make it true. You make it true for your life. But you don't have to be stuck in that continual loop and cycle of feeling negative about yourself all the time or feeling like you've been victimized and that you can't get out of it. There are ways, and you can use a lot of creativity to do this, but there are ways to kind of give yourself therapy to get out of it. And the main thing I'm going to leave you with is this: face it. Don't run from it. Face it. Okay? That's the number one thing. Look it right in the eye and say, I'm going to overcome you. You are not going to conquer me. I'm going to conquer you. You did not make me up. I made you up. That is the personal responsibility when you're dealing with the monster that's kind of lurking in the background and affecting your life. Have a good day.